Hello and welcome to One Man Stream. I've recently received several emails regarding data sources with Excel spreadsheets and vMix. The majority of the questions involve the process of importing the Excel information as a data source, and secondly, how to get that information to display in your vMix production. So today we're going to start from scratch and we're going to do just that. To get your Excel spreadsheet to work properly, it's really a 3 or 4 step process depending on whether or not you want to control it through vMix UTC. Step 1, the most important step, bringing in the Excel spreadsheet into vMix as a data source. Step 2, bring in your graphic as a title input. Step 3, mapping the graphic as a data source in vMix. And then the optional step 4, setting up your controls in vMix UTC. So stick with us as we explore Excel spreadsheets as a data source. Today's topic on One Man Stream. As we said in the intro, step 1 is the most important step, and that's actually bringing the Excel spreadsheet into your vMix production as a data source. So that's what we're going to do first. And if you look right down here at the bottom, you're going to see the hamburger menu. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click on data sources, and that's going to bring in this right here. So now we're going to choose what spreadsheet we want to bring into this vMix production. So we're going to click the plus button up here at the top, and we're working with an Excel spreadsheet today. So we're going to click on Excel, and it brings in Excel /CSV, and notice that the CSV is capital letters. So we're going to browse and we're going to find the one that we want. It's this one right here that says Data Source Example Data. So we just click on that and then click Open. And one thing that I want to make sure that I do is I click this box right here that says use first row as column names, and I'll show you why I do that. And when it brings it in, you'll notice this top row here is the column names. If not, it would just be column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5, column 6, and so on. And you would have to remember the information that you have in those columns. But when you put something here that's descriptive, you know exactly the kind of information you have in that column. You'll notice when we go back to the full screen view that down here at the bottom, this hamburger menu is turned red, and that tells you that you have the data sources activated within your vMix production. So step 2 is bringing in your graphic as an input into your vMix production. Well, this is the graphic that we're going to be using today. And it's a graphic that I created in GT Title Designer where it says position, number, first name, last name, and then over to the top left, the top right where it says college. And we're also going to bring in the player image, and I'll show you how we did this right here. I just right clicked and I'm going to click on the title editor. This live text field that I have is actually this one right here, and that's how I brought in, I just typed in One Man Stream. You could type in whatever you wanted to, and it immediately changes it. And with vMix 25, I've said this before, but it's worth repeating, you have these 3 different tabs here. This tab here is for text. This tab here is for images, and that's how we're going to bring in the player image. It's also how we brought in the player or the team logo. I just clicked on browse, I went to my images, and I picked on the image that I wanted. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and map this information with the data sources. We're going to start with first name, and I'm going to click on first name, then I'm going to click on data sources, data source Excel CSV. There's only one sheet to that Excel spreadsheet that we brought in. Sometimes I use multiple sheets, but on this one there's just one sheet. Since we're dealing with first name under column, we want to use first name, and you can see it brings that in. And then I want to put it under selected, because what that does is as we move up and down in that spreadsheet and we select that row, then it's going to change that name. So that's how we do first name. I'm going to click on last name, and then again I'm going to click on data source. I'm going to go back to the Excel CSV. We only have one sheet. We're working on last name now, and then we're going to leave it as selected, and you can see where it brings the last name in. So I click OK, and then you look over here on the graphic and you can see now we have the first and we have the last name in there. So now we're going to go to college, click on data source. Under data source, Excel, comma separated value, sheet 1. We're going to go down here to where it says college, And we're going to leave it on row select, or selected row actually. And then we can see the preview here where it brings in the college name. And now the college name is reflected. Number, we're going to click on Datasource. Again, Excel comma separated value, sheet 1. You can see where the number comes in. We're going to do the same thing for position now. You can see where the player's position comes in. Now we're clicking on the Images tab, and we're going to be able to bring in the player image. So again, we go to Datasource. We're going to go down here to where it says Image. You can see the path for that image, and we're going to click OK, and it brings in the image associated with that first line of information. So I believe we have all the information in now. We have position, our number, our first name, our last name, and then we have our college. Now let me show you something right here, and I'm going to change in the list, and you can see how all that information changes. I'm going to click the next row, same thing, that information changes. And as we go down, as we continue to go down this list, every time we click on something, the information changes. So let's go take it back to the top. So that's step 1, 2, and 3. Now step 4 is setting up our controls in vMix UTC. So if you want to be able to control this from a separate workstation, that's where vMix UTC comes in handy. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go under Settings, and we're going to click Web Controller, and we're going to take this information right here under website address, which is actually the IP address. We're going to right click and copy, and I'll show you why. Now we're going over to our vMix UTC layout, and you can see right here under Sync where you have a red dot here. That's showing that it's not synced with our vMix production. That's why I went to the web controller and got the IP address. So I'm going to go under Settings. I'm going to take out what I have in there, and then I'm going to right click and paste in that IP address that I got. You can see that the sync goes to yellow, and when I click on it, it's showing that it's now synced with my vMix production. So I'm going to go to Layout, and the first widget I'm going to bring in, it's going to be external data. It's going to be NDI Monitor. And the reason that I'm doing this is going to allow me to see what's going on in my main vMix productions. So when we create these buttons in a minute, when we're manipulating the buttons over here in vMix UTC, we'll be able to see the changes taking place in our main vMix production. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create a widget button. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to call this Show Player Info. And I'm going to click on the Script Plus button here, and I'm going to look under the overlay commands. And these are all designated within certain sections. You can see this here says Output Functions, Title Functions, Input Functions, and overlay functions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Overlay Input X, and then I'm going to go to the graphic that we're using, which is this one right here, and we're going to bring that overlay in on Overlay Channel 3. So now, if I have this set up correctly, just to give it a little bit flair, I'm going to change the color. Okay, so we're going to click on it once and hold our fingers, boom, and our graphic appears, and we're going to click on it again and hold our breath, and the graphic goes away. So we do have that created properly now. So we're going to get rid of it. What you need to do in vMix UTC in order to control the information in your vMix data sources is we need to create a couple buttons. So we're going to create one more button, and we're going to call, we're going to call this one Next Row. And what we're looking for now is our data source information. And I believe it's at the bottom. Well, I think replay's at the bottom, but I think it's before PTs. Okay, it is at the very bottom. So what we're looking for is data source next row. And then what we have to do is we have to put our name and table in here. So we're going to go Excel /CSV, comma, and then if you remember, we just have one sheet, so it's sheet 1. So let's go ahead and change this to slate gray and click OK. Now that we got our button set up, let's go ahead and bring our graphic back in. Okay, so we're going to go up here and we're going to click on next row. If our button is set up correctly, when we click on next row, it's going to go from John Smith down here to William Brown, and it's going to change the information in our graphic right here. So let's see what happens when we click next row. And it does. It changes all that information to William Brown, and you can see that it went to the next row. So let's click it one more time. So we're going to click next row again, and it's going to go down one more time and one more time. So let's go ahead and click on this button right here. We're going to take it back to the top. That's how you would do it manually if you're not using the vMix UTC to control this. So we have a next row button, so we also need to create a previous row button. So I'm going to click on this to duplicate it. I'm going to bring it down here. I'm going to click on the cog. I'm going to change the naming on this to previous row. And so all I'm going to do is, since we have this information correct, and I want to bring your attention to this, it says Excel /CSV, and that's capital CSV, and it is case sensitive. We have a comma, and then we have the name of our Excel spreadsheet. Now, if we had several different names, we'd have to use the name for each particular tab in that spreadsheet. But since all we have in this particular example is one sheet, and that was named sheet 1, and let me show you where that came in at. Okay, and this is the Excel spreadsheet that we brought in as our data source into our main vMix production. And you can see right here we only have one sheet, and that sheet, the name of that sheet is sheet 1. And we have to make sure that this information right here is identical to this information right here. So we have to make sure it's capital S and then small letters HEET number 1, and that's all together. There's no space there. If you had that as a small s, it's not going to work because everything is case sensitive. So just to reiterate, you want to make sure this is the way that it is, Excel /CSV, and that's capital C, capital S, capital V, comma, no space in between. And then this needs to be exactly the way that it appears right here in your spreadsheet. Okay, so let's see if that button works now. Let's go back to this. Look at this button. We got to make sure that we change it from data source next row to data source previous row. So we're just going to click on this function right here. And now it says data source previous row, and we click OK. So let's bring our data source back in again. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click on the, let's click the next row and watch the images and the information change as we're cycling down through that spreadsheet. And then our new button is previous row. So let's click on that, and you can see that it's taking the information in the spreadsheet. We're moving back up in that spreadsheet, and the information is changing each time we hit that button. That includes our tutorial for today on bringing in a Excel spreadsheet as a data source into vMix. Please give us a thumbs up and a like, and make sure that you do subscribe so that you'll be alerted as soon as new videos are posted. And as always, thank you so much.